Alrighty, we are recording. Welcome everyone to the American Pursuit of Excellence, my new podcast, where we basically aim to, bring people together, have conversations, trade ideas, challenge our own beliefs and ideas, and more importantly, discuss the future of the country. So, very excited for today's episode, which is discussion number 23. Very excited for today's guest, known on the internet world as Outraged Teen, but sitting here with Max Bonilla. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So I know we kind of just met, honestly, a couple minutes ago, and I know we traded a couple direct messages on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, maybe we'll just kind of jump into it. I came across your channel only like a few months ago, but immediately was impressed on this, very passionate teenager, expressing concern for his country and his community and calling out some of the craziness that we're seeing right now on, university campuses and the media. But if you don't mind just doing kind of like a quick intro of like what your brand is and what you're all about.
Yeah, so I'm pretty conservative. I'm, younger, and so maybe that's kind of shocking to people. So I basically like to dive into bills and legislation and laws and executive orders, just all the meat of all the legal stuff. I don't like the politics as much as I like the policy, nearly as much I would say, because the policy is what's impacting people. The politics, anybody can say anything on a stage, they can say anything in front or behind a podium. But when it comes to policy, that's like all the actions, all the things they're putting into place. A lot of times it's kind of like a read my lips type deal. They're what they're saying usually doesn't match what they're actually doing, and so I'm a lot more focused on the research end of things and what they're doing. And I think that people are done with the politics and they want to hear about what's actually happening. So that's why they're flocking to my page.
That's what led me to your page, so I completely resonate with that. Do you feel like were you always into policies and law? Do you come from like a family of politicians and lawyers, or what? How did all this start?
No, no, my family wasn't a part of any political dynasty. Maybe in third world countries, but definitely not in this country. I mean, I definitely, or even first world. I mean, my mom was from England, so I don't know if she had any relatives that were in politics. My father's from South America. He's from Ecuador. I don't, I know that he had family members that like politics, at least a few, but I haven't heard about any like political elitists or politicians or anything like that. Um, as far as I go, I don't have any of that history. I just, was a high schooler, maybe 14, maybe 15, and just something in me just turned on to that. I fell in love with it. Um, like I would take political tests in class a lot. I enrolled in a high school civics program, which was supposed to last 4 years. I didn't end up doing all 4 years of it because I tested out of high school. But as far as politics are concerned, I would say when I was about 14, 15, I started trying to understand it more because of the kind of impact it was having on our lives, especially in this state where things are just so crazy. And when things were just shutting down, I mean, we were the ones that were trying to take the lead on the entire thing, obviously in the wrong direction. And so I wanted to figure out a way to oppose that. And the only way for me to oppose that was by getting involved politically somehow.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that it sounds like you're first generation American, right? And I know for someone like myself, my mom's from Vietnam, my dad's from Alabama, so he's fifth or sixth generation Irish white guy. But my mom's from Vietnam, and a lot of people in California, I think, like people are from Mexico, people are from Africa, and oftentimes first generations are the ones who have the most appreciation for the founding fathers and overall constitution and the fact that we live in a really great place, whether you have money or not, and it's just up to each individual person on what you're going to do with it. So I'm not surprised that that you come from kind of that background. I assume then that your parents probably, you mentioned, were not really involved in this type of dialogue, just kind of found your own interest in it, huh?
No, no, they have their own things going on. My dad, works at an auto body shop, so he's a manager at an auto body shop. My mom is more like she works in a law firm, but she's not an attorney. So there are two people in different careers that almost have nothing to do with politics. Although my mom does say that some people in her firm do represent Donald Trump in some of these cases that he's having to deal with. But as far as like politics goes, no, neither of them are really heavily involved. It's just me. It's something that I fell in love with. It's where I feel like my voice just gets out there. I can project my views. I can tell people exactly how I look at things and how I feel about things, and sometimes with repercussions, sometimes with none. But I'm not worried about the repercussions, which is why I continue to do what I do.
Yeah, and like I said, I as a Californian, I appreciate people who speak up and have a voice because I think in from my view, like I'm born in '97, and I could say that kind of things have gotten a little worse. Maybe that's an understatement, but just in terms of like policies, economics, all that stuff. And from my experience, like having conversations, it really does come down to people who honestly are afraid to speak up or just don't want to deal with the confrontation or discomfort of someone disagreeing with them or being called a racist because you don't support affirmative action. So I think that's like a really troubling phenomena that's happened more predominantly after 2012. And I think that the only path out of it is for rational, logical, responsible people to speak up and find one another, whether in person or virtually.
Yeah, well, it's hard to get called a racist in a state that rejected affirmative action. California rejected affirmative action twice. We put Prop 209 on the ballot and said we don't want affirmative action in, our institutions, our universities, our government, job hiring practices. And then we also did Prop 16 in 2020. Well, the Democrats pushed what's called Prop 16, like they were pushing for the affirmative action, and Californians once again said no to affirmative action. No, they rejected it. They said no to affirmative action, and so regardless of how hard they push, I mean, there are a lot of Asian Americans in the state that are very, very opposed to affirmative action because we have a great university system that has propelled many of them to success because obviously they're working hard to get their degrees and um, our legislators, politicians, whatnot, they're trying to get in the way of that. They want to establish these quotas and demand that a certain amount of blacks and a certain amount of Hispanics get admitted into these universities, but they haven't done much of anything to merit it. And I am a Hispanic. I mean, I will say this. I don't want affirmative action. Let me do this myself. Let me fend for myself. Let me take care of myself.
Yeah, I respect the hell out of that. And that brings me to one of the major topics that I would love to get your perspective on. So, me personally, I care a lot about communism, socialism, Marxism. My mother escaped a communist country. I better, make the most out of the, atrocities she went through to give me a privileged life and give me an opportunity to make something in a good country. So, I care a lot about that. I know one of the underlying themes of socialism, communism in today's era is what we call woke Marxism, right? It's this whole oppressor versus oppressed, down with the successful, all that type of stuff. So I see that as a common denominator across many of these different issues, including affirmative action and DEI and all that stuff. But what would you say, being in the world of politics, like what would you say are some of the top 3 to 5 issues that you think Californians and Americans as a whole should have on their radar and take a look into?
Well, you made a good point about the Marxism, DEI, and whatnot. I mean, there's so many, like, they promote the false dichotomy of oppressor or not oppressed, and just all these false dichotomies because that's what keeps war going. That's what keeps division going. That's what keeps chaos going. You have to be in one of these two categories. Either you're immoral and tyrannical or you are oppressed. And so, like in America, we have so many people that are on the middle ground, like so many people that are not oppressed, but they're not immoral tyrants. They're people that are able to make a living off of doing their job and being an honest person and having problems just like any other human being. And I'm sorry, what was the question again? I'd like to answer that.
Yeah, no, I mean you already started to, but like, what would you say is the top 3 to 5 issues that you'd want to put on people's radar to get them thinking about?
Well, one big issue is the homelessness. You know, that's the thing about socialism is we get beyond trying to actually rehabilitate or thinking about rehabilitating or having conversations about getting the homeless in the shelters. Socialism, you're literally eating your own poop off the ground, never mind the poop of the homeless that you see in these cities. But like with our state, like and maybe some other blue states and blue cities, their policy is housing first where they just will get a homeless person off the street, stick them in an apartment or some other housing that they've built, or even if they've like rented, let's say they've converted a motel or hotel into housing for the homelessness, the homeless, they'll stick the homeless people in there. There's no rehabilitation, and then they'll end up leaving. You know, they'll leave the place. You'll probably have a successful like you'll probably be successful at a rate of like 3 out of 100. You know, you'll have three people that are like, all right, this is good enough for me, and 97 people that have some sort of alcohol or substance abuse problem that'll say, no, this is not enough for me. I don't want to be here. You know, you're forcing me to be here. And many people would probably think this is controversial, but I think we should force rehabilitate the homeless people because like I don't think it's compassionate to let them die on the streets. And that's one thing, that's one big policy that they're allowing in California is either there has to be this false dichotomy of stuff them in housing, and if they don't like it, let them die on the streets, you know? And it's like I think we should force rehabilitate them, although there's obviously a legal precedent that's preventing that. I think we need to do it. I think we need to get it done. So that's the one big issue. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about that? What do you think about what I just gave on one issue?
I completely agree, and honestly, it's the stance that I take as well. Like, I'm someone who's very passionate about psychology in general, and I know that many of the reasons why so many of our peers are against policies like that is because they think of back in like the 70s and 80s when we were forcing too many people into these kind of like unethical mental asylums and everything like that. And listen, I'm sure that there's some form of indecencies that occur with that process, but it's one of those things where we're helping 9 out of 10 people. And, listen, it's not perfect, but again, like you said, it's not compassionate to let people who are truly dependent on fentanyl and heroin and living on the streets, like literally defecating themselves. So I think it's like that kind of, progressive spirit and lens that we take on, well, we don't want to force anyone to do anything, but at the end of the day, these people like truly need help, right? Like these people will die or get their body parts amputated or infected. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Michael Schellenberger. He's someone who he wrote a book, San Francisco, how progressives destroy cities. But he talks about how many of these approaches that progressives take on these policies, whether it's with affirmative action, crime in the black communities, or homelessness, is like they say they're treating it with compassion, and in reality, it ends up producing much more suffering in that specific area. It's like they're making these problems much worse. So I completely agree with you on that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't be against bringing back mental asylums. I think that that's actually a good thing. That's that's needed, you know. And I once thought, well, maybe we'll give them trades, maybe we'll do something to help them have a skill, but I don't want to overload the labor force with all these people that know all these new trades. But I definitely think that they should get rehabilitated, and we should have the talks about here's what you can do for work, here's what you can do with your life, you know, and have them go through those workshops or whatever it is or that training. I mean, in this state, another thing is we were releasing criminals. I don't know if you know, but we were like giving them credits for good behavior, and we were saying like we were expediting the process. Like they weren't having like I've even talked to probation officers who've said that they don't have to take these classes to be able to get out of jail, like during COVID, because they weren't doing any of the classes or any activities that they'd have to do to actually earn credits to get out on early parole.
Mm-hmm.
They were just saying, let's just give it to them because it's not fair that they don't have the classes being offered. Whereas normally they'd actually have to complete the programs to get the credits. So that's how they were speeding it up. They were like they were giving out good behavior credits at like twice or three times the speed. So that's why you saw all these sexual predators being released, all these murderers being released, all these violent criminals getting out early, even though they were claiming that they were all somehow angels now and all like they forgot about everything they did and they're new people and just all this bogus nonsense. Um,
Yeah, and I know just one quick ad there. I know with certain progressive politicians like Gavin Newsom, like they want to, hey, vote for me and I'll close down prisons. I'll do this, I'll do that. And guess what? If you close down a prison, what the hell are you going to do with all the prisoners in that prison? Like they're going to have to find these kind of shortcut ways of getting them out. Just like you said, they were expediting the process of anything and again, releasing them on the street. So it's just one situation of pretending to be compassionate while negatively impacting the normal, responsible working class.
Yeah, right, right. They were not actually going through all the things that they needed to do, going through the motions, so to speak, to get out like they would normally. And so they
Yeah.
were cheating. They were cheating all of that and claiming that they were framing it to us as if they had met all the requirements, and that's why they were being let out. But that's not the case at all. And so that's another thing is we've got to keep people in prison. People that belong in prison should stay in prison. And I'm no friend of mass imprisonment, but if they don't want to be rehabilitated, if they don't want to change, what else are you going to do? You're going to let them go out and just harm our communities, you know?
Yeah.
No. My answer is no. My answer is you got to let them sit behind bars and rot because that's that's frankly that's where they belong. And I faced also controversy for this, but I think people should be able to defend their own stores. You know, you see people getting
Yeah.
robbed and stuff like people rob. I mean, I don't even care if it's a candy bar or a gas station or a Walgreens or whatever it is, but you have all these mom and pops even, and they have thieves come in. I mean, I've even seen people robbing Oakland jewelers, and they cannot defend themselves because of how many laws we have here in California. I think if somebody's robbing your store, you should have the ability to shoot them because they are harming your livelihood, they are harming your ability to live. And I think that there should be a nice sign outside of every store. There should be a nice sign that's courteous enough to warn people, look, if you come in here to rob me, you're going to get shot. And if they get shot and something happens, well, that's your fault. Apparently, you didn't value your life enough to avoid getting yourself into that situation.
Yeah.
And it's
And
going to
that's
sound
where,
controversial, but I think that's the way that we intimidate people enough to stop committing these crimes.
yeah. Well, and that's exactly it is like you either enforce the laws and people have consequences and they experience accountability or they don't and then they run rampant. And it's whole part of this whole, victimizer narrative where, you have your AOCs of the world saying that people who are stealing and robbing, they're only doing it because society's exploiting them and society was rough on them. It's like it's never their fault. They always pull out individual accountability, which is honestly again a common theme across many of these socialist issues.
And they need bread. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like there were like 10 guys or I don't know, 10 or 12 that ransacked some Nordstrom down in West, like I don't know if it was Hollywood or LA, but they got away with like $100,000 of designer stuff. Or like if you're telling me that people that are robbing jewelry stores, high-end stores, Nordstrom's, ransacking stores, like if you're telling me all they need is bread when they're like stealing tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff, I mean, you're clearly lying. You're clearly being disingenuous because they're robbing way more than what a loaf piece of bread would cost.
Yeah. See, yeah, and it's easy to make the argument as well when it comes down to like businesses and vandalism, all that stuff. And I think people don't see the harsh reality of that until a loved one of theirs gets mugged or attacked or anything like that. So the sad part is things like this take multiple years to get to that point where you can't even walk down the street without feeling like you need a firearm on you. And that's the path that we're headed down. Seriously.
Yeah, no, we are. I mean, I think concealed carry is great. I think that there needs to be some national legislation. I mean, we shouldn't even need legislation saying that people should be able to have concealed carry. But it's gotten so chaotic where you have so many states clamping down on it. You have California, you have Illinois. Next is probably gonna be Colorado. Because I mean, Colorado now is, as we speak, passing a ban on semi-automatic weapons, like the trade, the sales, all that stuff. And so we need something in national legislation, Congress, I don't care, do it. They're probably not going to do it, but that says that everyone has a right to concealed carry. I don't even know why it should be so hard for us to make that statement, but we've gotten to a place where the states have got clamped down on the Second Amendment. So many governing bodies. The President Biden has signed so many executive orders expanding his powers to clamp down on people's ability to own guns that we just need something like that. It's gotten that bad, unfortunately, but I would heavily push for that. I would heavily advocate for that. And I'd say that that's like at minimum. At minimum, we need everybody needs to have a right to have concealed carry and know that they're okay doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, me being in Southern California, 25 minutes from the border, like, I don't know if you've been seeing all the crazy stuff happening in El Paso, but El Paso, it took them 3 years to finally say, screw the feds. We're going to start blocking this border. They put a serious chokehold on the cartel's operations. And guess where they're going to go? They're going to go from
California.
Texas over to California because we're this sanctuary city and state and all that stuff. So I'm extremely concerned for people in the closer to the border because all that crazy shit that we were seeing in Texas is now going to start coming over here. People's homes are going to get robbed. If you've seen those videos of boats fucking pulling up on the San Diego beaches, like, people need to get their shit together. As Jordan Peterson says, get your, house in order and get a fucking firearm. Like, people need to be able to protect themselves. And, unfortunately, if things get worse, there will be bloodshed.
Oh yeah, I mean, you need to be ready to defend your home. Just make sure you have all the basics, you know. Maybe
Yeah.
be starting a garden of some sort, growing some things is always nice. And even if nothing's gonna happen, it's good to always have that just for fun. It's nice and something that you don't have to get from the grocery store with what especially with what they're injecting and God knows what's in that stuff. So it's always good
Yeah.
to have your own garden. It's always good to have your own weapon or tool of self-defense. It's always good to try to believe in something and try to find God, something that's greater than yourself. I mean, just doing all these things that are productive, that give you a purpose in life. Perhaps you're I mean, just these are some of the most fundamental things. And also making sure you're like, even if you're a man, just like your landscaping looks good, your lawn looks good. I mean, just not always being so down about what's going on with the political stuff, but more like, what can I do today to make a difference in my life and my household and my community? So like some real stuff, like what can I do today? How can I make an impact?
Yeah. Yeah, my motto and the whole name of my podcast is, whatever situation you're in, poor, not, wealthy, what doesn't matter, pursue excellence. Look, try to grow, try to do a better job. Is your health in order? Are your relationships good? Are you on the right path towards financial stability? All that good stuff. Like, don't just accept defeat. And that's where we get all these kind of lost, soulless, woke activists shaking their fists in the air who think that the world's out to get them when in reality they're the ones who have failed in getting their shit together. So,
Yeah, I mean, even look at the guy that set himself on fire in front of that court today, and I'm thinking,
I
what
saw
is
that.
like I didn't know what to make of it, and I thought, what is that about? And I thought, well, maybe this guy has gone down so many holes. Maybe he's like maybe perhaps he's a finer tuned version of me, but he has on the contrary, something that's different between him and me is that perhaps he has no hope in anything. He has no hope in everything. Maybe he's very cynical, like he doesn't see anything beyond this world. Maybe he thinks he's gonna die and that's it, and we're all screwed and all these things, and perhaps is mentally insane. You never know at the same time, and ended
Yeah.
up taking his life. And I'm sure he was a person that went down all these deep rabbit holes. Maybe he was conspiratorial. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe, but he was obviously maybe an older version of me who did all this research, saw how people are screwing us over, and thought that that should equate to, or that should lead to, I want to end my life. And he did that. He took his own life. Or he's in
Well,
critical condition now, but he's probably gone.
I appreciate that you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, but, I also think that he probably went down the wrong course in life, and that's what led him to want to take his own life and do something that absolutely insane. So I know, like, one, I appreciate your time. I know we're, doing about half hour today. I really hope we can do another discussion. But I would say I would love your comments on maybe something optimistic that people in my community, people in your community, as if they're listening to this, like what can they be hopeful for, looking towards the future?
Well, you know what? I've got to say this. It's all about like when it comes to this country, like the best you can do is work hard. Work hard on yourself, work hard on your business, work hard on your family. I mean, love on your family, build those relationships with your family, always be closely knit with your family as much as possible. And, always be on the search for something like greater than yourself. Like I read a Bible, I like studying my Bible, I like looking into stuff that has to do with that. And so, if you can have a relationship with God, if you can have a good relationship with your family, with your community, and those around you, I think you have a lot of great things to look forward to. I mean, and let's say the world goes to crap, God forbid the world goes to crap. You have a community that you've perhaps built relationships with that will be able to rally behind you, and you'll be able to help defend each other. The whole thing about community is like what's interesting is before we had the government, we had communities and they had their own welfare system, their own means of exchange, trade, bartering, helping each other survive, perhaps a faith in something, like I said, that's greater than themselves. Uh, a lot, like for example, I mean, even the Amish, they're not necessarily Christian, but they obviously have their own system and they're not dependent on the grid, they're not dependent on electricity. But I'm saying if you can, even if you are dependent on the grid, if you can build connections with people to the point that it's you don't necessarily need to be dependent, then that's great. That's a great thing. I think if you're striving to do your best in every aspect of life, then there's good things to look forward to. I mean, obviously everybody's going to die. That's the reality. But as far as, your life itself, there's good to look forward to.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, man, and I agree with the church aspect. I grew up extremely not religious and just went to church for the first time like 2 days ago. Had some friends invite me, and you can't beat the optimism of that community. Seriously, so I've massive respect for people involved in that, and I mean they are spending their time and money trying to help people and guide youngsters on having a sense of morals, so they don't go down the path of cocaine and hookers. You know what I mean? So massive respect for folks like that. And again, I extremely appreciate your time, and just wanted to say again, as a California man, like I appreciate everything you're doing. I think you got a good head on your shoulders. I think you're saying all the right stuff, and as you get older, find humility. Always manage that ego. Ego's always going to be your biggest enemy, and don't forget that working hard, you can't avoid it. So you're doing all the right stuff, man. So
You can't avoid working hard. I appreciate that. Thank you. And like, this is the way that I view it is like even if people are out there, I mean, there are people that are out there that are cynical. They see everything failing around them. They think the world's burning. They think that a lot of things in the world is burning. But like they have like it's like you said, you went to a Christian church. Many of them have hope in God, including myself, and that something great is coming, something greater is coming. We're looking like, there's a hope and a future, beyond all this, So that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. They might not be optimistic in terms of what's happening in this world, but they're optimistic for that future that awaits them.
yeah. Back to the basics. That's what we all need, and I think if we do that, things will get a lot better, man.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I appreciate your time. I truly do hope we can do another discussion someday. If there's anything I can do for you or anyone in my community I can connect you with, like don't hesitate to reach out. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you very much.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll do this again. I appreciate it. I'll catch you
Yeah,
later.
absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Let me hit